Why? Why are you letting your tenants string you along every single month after month after month? Stop it. Just stop it. My name is Chatto, and I've been a real estate investor for over 25 years. And personally, I've been way too lenient about filing evictions on people. Not good. So, that being said, I wanted to have a quick conversation with you. I wanted to have a quick chat with Chatto about evictions. In today's video, I'm going to go over and explain the top 3 reasons why filing quickly is so important to maintain profitability and cash flow as a landlord. So the first big reason, the number one reason that you want to file your eviction quickly and on time is that filing eviction has a magical way of turning a non-paying tenant into a paying tenant. It's kind of amazing, actually. So sometimes you're going to get a tenant right now who is not paying, and now all of a sudden you file that eviction, they're going to become a paying tenant. Or they're not a paying tenant, they're not going to turn into a paying tenant. So you're going to go through, they're not going to pay, you're going to evict them and going to replace them with a paying tenant. So that's the first reason. Also, as an aside on that, there are a lot of local government assistance programs that are out there to help your tenants, and they can't access those resources without an eviction being filed against them. So keep that in mind. That's another way it turns a non-paying tenant into a paying tenant. In fact, we just had a tenant recently that we filed on, and out of the blue, he's got 2 agencies stepping up to support him and getting his rent paid and getting him caught up. So turning a non-paying tenant into a paying tenant. So reason number 2, you're able to trade a bad tenant for a good tenant. Sometimes it's the same tenant, somebody who, again, like I said, now all of a sudden they turn from somebody who doesn't pay the rent into somebody who realizes how important it is to pay the rent and do what they said they were going to do, into a paying tenant. Also, it is a opportunity to potentially, for somebody who is not a good tenant, to move them along. The longer you wait, the more it's going to cost you. So we had an instance of a tenant who was very difficult, and she constantly was getting behind in rent, and we kept giving her grace and kept giving her grace. And you know what? It ended up costing us a lot of money, because when we finally did file and we finally did what we needed to do to get the eviction filed and get her out, we ended up taking a tenant that I think she was paying around $1,200 a month in rent up to market rent, which is $19. So while we had to put a little money into the property, right, because we weren't able to do a full renovation while she lived there, we went from a property making $1,200 a month into $1,900 a month. So we turned a bad tenant into a good tenant. The third big reason that you want to file your eviction quickly is it really is the only recourse that you have as a landlord. It really is the only recourse you have as a landlord to force the tenant's hand in some way. That you can ask all you want, you can text message them, you can call them, you can send them letters, hey, pay your rent, pay your rent, pay your rent. But until you actually file that eviction, they do not need to respond, or they can string you along, right? Once you file that eviction, the timer goes. There's a court date they need to be at. There's a whole process that begins that they can't talk their way out of. So it's extremely important to remember that that's the only recourse you have. If they say, oh, well, gee, I'm going to pay on the 17th. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll wait until the 17th. If 17th comes and they don't pay, like, okay, now you're that much further behind in getting that eviction filed. And think about it, right? They may pay, and that might be okay, but they also, if they don't pay, you have absolutely no recourse, right? If you filed and they pay, great, you cancel the filing, wonderful, no big deal. But if, and then they pay, great, you cancel the filing. But if they don't pay, you're that much further behind the 8 ball with the only recourse you have. So that's the third reason. So those are the 3 big reasons. Number 1, turn a non-paying tenant into a paying tenant. Number 2, turn a bad tenant into a good tenant. And number 3, it's the only recourse you have. I want to give you a couple examples of issues that we had because we waited. We took too long and we didn't file, and it ended up costing us a lot of money. One example, I'm going to go back to pre-COVID. We had a tenant who was a slow payer. it was actually not even our tenant. Our tenant, we had a tenant, and he wanted out of the lease, and this is a whole nother mistake. He wanted out of the lease, and we did not let him out of the lease because he just signed. I'm like, bro, you just signed the lease 2 months ago. But he wanted to leave. We should have let him go, but we didn't. So he gets the bright idea. He moves his girlfriend in, and then he moves out. So now the girlfriend, all of a sudden, who doesn't have a lease with us, is our tenant. So that was the first mistake we made. But long story short, she kept, she was making effort, and she was paying, and she was doing her best, so to speak. And we finally filed eviction. And guess what? It was somewhere in the beginning of 2020, and COVID hit. And what happened in COVID? An eviction moratorium. So now we literally had the lockout scheduled with the constable to come and physically remove her from the property. And like literally it was 2 days before that they put the eviction moratorium into place, and we could not evict her after her being so far behind on rent. So that cost us money. So now she's there and she's not going anywhere. And she's terrorizing all the other people in the building. But that's a whole nother horror story I can get into. So that being said, if we had filed on time, she would have been out before the eviction moratorium, and we would have saved a lot of money. Is what it is. Lesson learned. And then another tenant that I can speak of, he constantly got his rent paid. He constantly came through, right? So we gave him some grace and he came through. And while, okay, that sounds like maybe that's like an okay thing to do, I didn't file on him. And what ended up happening is, of course, eventually he wasn't able to come through. And then I had to go through an eviction filing, and it turned a non-payer into a payer. He got caught up. And we had to do that. I think we had to file on him at that point 2 or 3 times. And it was finally on the 3rd time that he did not come through. And we were able to evict him on that 3rd time. And we were able to turn a bad tenant into a good tenant. We actually increased rent significantly. There was a big renovation after he moved out. Because a lot of times people that don't pay the rent leave a mess. And also people that don't pay the rent don't take care of the property. But we had a big turnover, and we were able to increase the rent significantly. And if I would have started the relationship with filing eviction when he didn't pay, right, I have a feeling that the whole relationship, he either would have been out a lot sooner, or, right, he would have been a tenant that pays rent, right? Those are the 2 things that could have happened. So it just didn't behoove us to delay in those cases. And there's multiple cases like that. It's just something that's constant. So the big idea here is really that evictions, right, you need to file. It's the only tool that you have as a landlord in your tool belt to handle when tenants don't pay. All the letters, all the calls, all the text is all for naught if they say they're going to do something and they don't do it. It's the only recourse that you have. Just think about it, right? Think about the actual expense of not filing early, right? Our policy is rent is due on the 1st. It is late after the 5th. So on the 6th in the morning, we run all the late fees. And then we reach out to all the tenants and we give them a little bit of grace. We say, okay, you need to make a sizable payment by the 10th, right? And a payment plan for the balance, right? You need to have a plan. You need to have money in our hand by the 10th and a payment plan that makes sense, or else we're filing eviction on the 11th. That's our policy. And, right, and just think about it, right? So 10 days into the month, so right there, if the rent is $1,500 a month, the number that I like to use for easy math, the rent is $1,500 a month, right? And 10 days have passed. They are $500 in the hole at that point, right? Now, if on the 10th they reach out to me and they say, hey, you know what? I can pay on the 17th. Can you pay anything now? No, I don't have anything now, but on the 17th, I'm getting paid. I can pay on the 17th. So now, if I don't file that eviction, what's going to happen? Another 7 days pass. That's $350 out of my pocket. And I'm already in the whole $500. And now another 7 days is another $350 out of my pocket. So now $850 in the hole. The 17th comes, they don't pay. Well, now I'm that far behind. Now I need to file eviction, right? And depending on your area, like that could be If you're lucky, it could be 3-4 weeks. A lot of places, it's a month and a half, 2 months. It's another $3,000. So yeah, you need to, the longer you wait to file, the longer you're waiting for, number one, to turn a paying tenant into turn a non-paying tenant into a paying tenant, the longer you're waiting to turn a bad tenant into a good tenant, and the more money it's costing you because you have delayed the only recourse, number three, the only recourse that you have as a landlord. So hopefully this was of value to you. I just spent 10 minutes chatting about evictions, and hopefully you liked it. If so, please like and subscribe, because apparently algorithm, blah, blah, blah. And I'd love to have a conversation with you in the comments below. Have you gone through an eviction process? What did you do? Did you wait too long? What happened? I'd love to learn more. And as always, I'd love to thank you for watching another episode of Chat with Chatto. Ha ha.